recalculating. You're driving along, you take a wrong turn, maybe you ignore the instructions, or somehow you just end up somewhere you didn't intend. Suddenly you realise you're off course when that little robotic GPS voice says, recalculating, in whatever accent you might have chosen for it. Now, what I appreciate about it is that it doesn't give up on me. It simply recalculates. But what do you do when it's not just a day trip, but when your whole life feels a bit like that? Not just one wrong turn, but a sense that something is off. A quiet awareness that you're not where you thought you'd be. Perhaps spiritually, perhaps personally, maybe emotionally. And most of us learn at some level or another to cope with that by assuming that the pressure is on us to find our way back to feeling okay. Try harder, do better, get yourself sorted, and then perhaps things will be put right. I wonder if any of you feel that way. That assumption can seep into how many of us think about God. That faith is about us finding our way back to Him. But the message we find in the Bible is not first of all about us finding our way to God. It's about God coming to find us. And that message can be summed up in 3 movements. He loved us, He found us, He sent us. And that's where we're going today. So first, He loved us. In Romans 5, Paul writes something extraordinary. God proves His love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Contrary to how many of us act, He doesn't say that Christ died for us once we'd at least started to correct our direction. He doesn't say that Christ died for us after we'd worked a long way back. He says, while we were still sinners, while we were still weak, while we were still off course, God came towards us. At the cross, Jesus doesn't respond to our progress. He responds to our need. And that is what grace is. The psalmist has discovered this personally. He says, I love the Lord, for He heard my voice. He turned His ear to me. God is not distant or indifferent. He hears. He leans in. He responds. Grace begins here. He loved us. If Romans tells us that God doesn't wait for us to recalculate before loving us, then Matthew shows us what it looks like when God Himself comes into the places where we've ended up. Let's look at our second point. He found us. In Matthew 9, Jesus is travelling through towns and villages, teaching, healing, meeting all kinds of needs. We're told when He saw the crowds, He had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Harassed, helpless, scattered, weary. People who don't know which way is up, let alone which way is home. And Jesus doesn't stand at a distance. He moves toward them. If the GPS image helps us, this is where it deepens. God is not a distant, disembodied voice telling lost people to try harder to find their way back. He enters the places that we've ended up. He comes into the confusion, into exhaustion, into mess. That is what we see in Jesus. We see God searching for us, actively coming to find us. And many of us recognise that in our own experience, we can tell stories of times when we weren't looking for God at all, or times when we were maybe looking in all the wrong places. And yet, Jesus found us. Not because we had corrected our path, but because he came looking. He loved us. He found us. And it doesn't stop there. Let's look at our final point. He sent us. And then Jesus turns to his disciples and he speaks about a plentiful harvest and a shortage of workers. What does he do about that? Well, it's probably not really what we would first think. He sends them, ordinary people, people who are really pretty rough around the edges, people who are still learning who he is. And he sends the men away. Because mission is not based on perfection, but on mercy. It's as if Jesus is saying, you know what it is to be found. Now go and help others know it too. Psalm 116 again gives shape to this response. I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Grace received becomes grace shared. Worship becomes witness. And so the church becomes a community of people who have heard, in their own lives, in their own ways, the quiet mercy of God, saying, recalculating. People who are very much still learning and who now help others to hear it too. Not with any sense of superiority, no, but with compassion, by being there, by showing love. Now, of course, we're not going to do exactly what the first disciples did in the same way. But today we are still sent into ordinary places, to ordinary people, with extraordinary grace. We share what God has offered to us. He loved us. He found us. And he sends us. Romans tells us that Christ died for us while we were still sinners. Matthew shows us Jesus moving towards people who were harassed and helpless. He loved us. He found us. He sent us. Not because we had our direction sorted, but exactly because we didn't. Not because we'd earned our way back, but because he came to bring us home. And perhaps the question today is not, have I found my way to God? But where has God already been finding me? And if we've been found, then the only remaining question is, who might he be sending me to this week? Amen.